This is just a complete, yeah, this is cooked there. It's all in the kitchen.
Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Nami Govinda Radhe Govinda Radha Govinda Radhe Radha Govinda Radha Govinda Jaya Srila Prabhupada Prandana Prabhupada Prandana Srila Prabhupada Prandana Radha Vrindavan
What 26 Second Avenue is to New York City and the ISKCON movement, this little ancient farmhouse is to New Vrindavan. This is where it all began. Srila Prabhupada wanted, from the very beginning of his dream for the Krishna consciousness mission, a place of pilgrimage to reveal Lord Krishna's pastimes in the Western world. You know the story of Prabhupada sitting on that park bench in Central Park, telling a man that he had so many temples and farm communities, so many books were being published in schools. At that time he was alone living in the Bowery. He didn't even have the storefront of 26 Second Avenue. But he had a vision that was inaugurated by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityananda Prabhu. That the holy name of Krishna be distributed in every town and village in this world. And Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, he also had this vision. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, at the first meeting with Srila Prabhupada at 1 Ultadanga Junction Road, planted the seed of the mission of Krishna consciousness. He told him that you are an intelligent young man. You should spread this message of Lord Chaitanya all over the world. At the age of 70, Srila Prabhupada arrived in New York City in 1965. And he started very simple, with practically no help. Some well-wishers, not even really committed devotees, just well-wishers, told him they would help him by paying the first month's rent. That was after he was kicked out, almost violently, of the previous place he was staying, and he had nowhere to go. But they said they wouldn't be able to pay the next month's rent. So Prabhupada began like that after about a year of struggling in the Bowery, trying to somehow or other give devotees, the previous acharyas, the satisfaction of seeing their dream fulfilled. Prabhupada said many times he would go to the docks with the Jaladuta. He had a return ticket, and he was thinking he should come back because nothing was happening. Everything seemed to be failing. He wrote to his godbrothers and well-wishers in America, I'm here. It's our Guru's order. Send some devotees to help me. Send some funds. Send something. But nothing came. After repeated letters of request, he finally got a mridanga, some kartals. Previous to that, he was playing some American drums, little simple bongo drum. So Prabhupada demonstrated how a devotee with faith and determination carries on his service under any circumstance, completely depending on Krishna to be the reciprocator of his love. And what results come? Prabhupada said, if one person becomes Krishna conscious, through all of this effort of the Hare Krishna movement, mission is a success. But the compassion of a great Vaishnava it breaks his heart to see any one single person left in this world without Krishna consciousness, because that is the state of real suffering. Srila Prabhupada left Vrindavan in 1965. But actually, he didn't leave Vrindavan. He carried Vrindavan in his heart. He wanted to reveal Vrindavan to the world. And in each and every temple, he wanted Sri Sri Radha Krishna Vrindavan to attract the hearts of all the conditioned souls. New Vrindavan had a very, very special, significant place in his mission, because it was here that he wanted culture, the mood and the lifestyle of Vrindavan to be established in the West. He wanted replicas of the six Goswamis' temples and the forests and the holy places of Vrindavan to be constructed here. Just as millions of people go to Vrindavan in India every year on pilgrimage to associate with Vaishnavas and to be spiritually rejuvenated by hearing and chanting the glories and names of the Lord. He wanted New Vrindavan to serve that same function. How was it found in West Virginia? Kirtanananda Swami and Hayagriva, they wanted to start a little farm community. They were not thinking in terms of New Vrindavan or anything like that. They just wanted to start a little farm community because they knew Prabhupada wanted that, teaching cow protection. Agriculture. They had no money. In the San Francisco Oracle, which was a newspaper for the revolutionary-minded youths of the time, they saw they bought 100 acres of land that was on lease in the hills of West Virginia for practically nothing. So they felt this was the only property in the whole country that they could afford, so they came here. And it was a great struggle, but somehow or other, they got a 99-year lease for $99. And in the contract it is said, after the 99 years, if you pay $1, then you own the property. Binding contract. So they came up here. The road that you walked was not the road. This is like an interstate highway compared to the road there was up until just a few years ago. This road was personally carved in the mountains by Bharasana Maharaj, His Holiness. Tremendous work. But previously, there was just a mud path that went way down a very different direction than this road to Bulaban. And that mud path was very, very well known as Agasura, because it devoured anyone who went upon it, especially any vehicles. At that time, this section of the house was not there. This was a modern addition from the pillar on. It was over 100-year-old farmhouse, dilapidated, holes in the walls. It was an old, dilapidated barn that has been torn down in recent years. And it was the middle of the wilderness. You had to walk 3 miles up a mud road. And 2 streams went by that mud road that you'd have to cross across, that you'd have to somehow go across. In the winter, it was usually solid ice, 3 miles of solid ice, going up and down hills. And in the summer, it was very famous throughout the Hare Krishna movement for being approximately knee-deep with mud. Not ordinary mud, but New Vrindavan mud. That means when you put your foot in it, your foot becomes the property of New Vrindavan. And only with great effort can you reclaim it. Well, they came up here, and it was very simple. And they invited Srila Prabhupada to come. I believe it was 1969 Srila Prabhupada came here. And actually even his car got stuck. They had to leave it, and the devotees had to walk. And when Prabhupada came here, there was really nothing here. It was a jungle, completely isolated from civilization. 3 miles from an old beat-up country road, which has later been renovated. But Srila Prabhupada saw a holy place that would attract people from all over America to Krishna in this little unknown, desolate farmhouse that we're sitting today. Prabhupada officially named this place New Vrindavan. The house that we're staying, he would give his classes every day in this temple room. Upstairs was where he would rest. It was divided in half. Half was his bedroom, half was where he would translate Srimad Bhagavatam. In the back was a persimmon tree. For hours and hours a day, he would sit under that persimmon tree and work on his translations and speak to devotees who would sit in the grass and the weeds and at his lotus feet. He would tell them the vision of how to develop New Vrindavan. He was telling them how to move mountains, how to build bridges across valleys. He told them about the necessity of cow protection and how to actually conduct it in the Western world. He revealed the vision of the 7 temples, 7 hills and valleys, to reveal the true glories of Braja. But most of all, he wanted to establish the principle of simple living and high thinking. He was very much discouraging any type of modern technology here. Although in the city temples, he encouraged very much any type of technology to spread Krishna consciousness. But he wanted a model of real Vrindavan Vedic culture here. Work the oxens, try to avoid tractors, Plant your own food. Have no necessity to go to the town or anywhere else. Be self-sufficient. With the milk of the cows, you could make ghee, you could make sweets, you could make cheese, curd. With the dung, you can fertilize the fields. With the oxen, you plow the fields. And you can grow grains, vegetables, fruits, flowers. And you live happily and keep Krishna in the center of everything. When many, many technical questions were asked about how to develop New Vrindavan, at one time Prabhupada said, you just chant Hare Krishna. The first day I came up, one devotee actually named Devada Prabhu, he was putting hay on a wagon with a horse to drive it up here for the few cows that were up here. And he told me it's an order that you have to help me put the hay on the wagon and then come up because you're not allowed to just stay anywhere else. You go up and don't come down. So I was put up here. And there was about 5 devotees living. First service I was asked to do was to pull weeds out of this strawberry patch right below the house, just about a 5-second walk from where we are. And I was thinking, pulling weeds? That's murder. Because the way I was trained in India is you cannot kill any living being. So I said, this is murder, killing weeds. I'll cut them, but I will not pull them out from the roots. And the devotees said to me, you must kill them. And then they started preaching to me about Bhagavad Gita. How hard? And then they started preaching to me about Bhagavad Gita. His own cousin brothers, his own friends, because it was the order of Krishna, he had to kill them. So you are being ordered by Krishna to kill these weeds. I surrendered. But what I would do is I would put my mouth to the ground, right at when I was thinking, the ear of the weed, and I would say the Maha Mantra, and then pull it. Hoping that he would get a higher birth. So I did that for some time. Then a few days later, that same devotee gave me a double-barrel shotgun. He told me there's a cornfield down here, and the groundhogs are eating the corn. Your full-time service is to sit on this hill, look down at the cornfield, and shoot and kill any groundhog that comes. Then they taught me how to shoot the shotgun. So what happened is, the person who was saying this he was living at Vrindavan. He would just come up, give orders, and come down. So what I would do is I would sit on that hill, and I knew if any corn was eaten by the groundhogs, I was in big trouble. And the groundhogs would come, and I would see them, and they'd look at me. And I'd look at them, and I had the shotgun in my hand, but I just couldn't do it. I was trying to meditate on Arjuna. And I realized I just wasn't Arjuna. So I just started yelling at the groundhog and chasing them. I would just, every time they'd come, I just chased them away. So weeks went by and no corn was touched. And and I never pulled the trigger of that shotgun.
Very well.
There was 3 cows up here, Kalia, Dudya, and Basya. And Kalia was the original cow of New Vrindavan. She was just a little black cow with some white spots, and she only had one eye. She was an old cow when she was bought, because she was very small and she was very inexpensive. But she was like the queen. She was so majestic. Every year, for about 10 years, she gave a calf every year and gave so much milk to the deities. So I was milking these cows. And then there was the great service of preparing for Prabhupada's arrival. He was going to stay at Madhuban, which is down the mountain, across the little river, up another mountain, and then across. The house is again across the street from where Sankirtan lives now. It has been torn down. And that house was so old and so dilapidated. There was a question asked, does anybody here know how to paint? So I said, when I was a little boy, I once helped my father paint the walls in our house. So they said, oh, then you're in charge of painting the house. So, first they gave me this little knife and told me, first you have to scrape all the peeling paint off the house before you can start painting the inside and the outside. So we just started trying to paint for Prabhupada's house. And then I'd come out from Mangal Arati here, and there was 6 people living in this ashram. Hayagriva and his wife and son, Adipati, and Murari Gupta and one other devotee. And there was a place called the Pig Pen, because previously it was the place that the old farmers kept their pigs. I stayed in the Pig Pen. I considered it a very nice budget kutir. Because compared to what I was living in India, this was so opulent. It actually had walls. Then after the morning program, we would milk the cows and go down the mountain, up the mountain, paint the house, come back down, climb the mountains again. And there was no paths. You'd have to just hold on to vines and trees to keep from falling as you go up and down the mountains. Just through the very thick jungle. Then come back and milk the cows. That morning, evening program. Just a few devotees. It's very sweet. Then Srila Prabhupada came, and he gave classes every day at Vrindavan. We built a beautiful pavilion on the top of a mountain. And there Prabhupada celebrated his Vyasa Puja. The new addition to the old farmhouse at Vrindavan was completed right on Janmashtami night. Prabhupada inaugurated the deities moving to their new temple. Prabhupada gave initiations. It was a glorious festival. It was the biggest festival of the time up until that date in the Western world. Devotees from all over America came to celebrate Janmashtami and Vyasa Puja in the personal association of Srila Prabhupada. I was planning to return to India after Prabhupada left. But then I was thinking, why do I have all my own independent desires? I should serve where Prabhupada wants me to serve, not where I want to serve. I really didn't like New Vrindavan at all. I loved Vrindavan. Because I was thinking the people here are pretty rough. And Vrindavan is so sweet. So I prayed to Radha Vrindavan Chandra. Prabhupada was leaving to go to the Syrian mosque in Pittsburgh to give lecture. And I prayed to Radha Vrindavan Chandra, where do you want me, here or there? And Srila Prabhupada indicated to me that I should stay here at New Vrindavan. So then I decided I will just stay on. So I lived up here. I was chanting 64 rounds a day, carrying on from Vrindavan, back down in the little pig pen. And milking the cows and reading Prabhupada's books hours and hours a day. It was like simple Babaji life. And then I was given the service of working in oxen. There was an oxen named Brisham. He was so stubborn that the only work he would do was sleep. As soon as you connected anything to him, he would just lay down and go to sleep. So people working the oxen at Vrindavan were very frustrated. They would try to do everything according to the books to get him to work, but he would just sleep. So they brought him up here, and they told me that this was their gift. That they gave me a little axe and brisham and a rope, and told me you go into the forest, you look for dead trees, and you cut them down, and you tie them to the back of brisham, and bring them in, and then chop them up, because the only way there was for cooking was with wood. And that's how the deities will be given their offerings. There's no gas or electricity like what would be used for heating or cooking in those days. So I would cut down the tree with this little axe, and it would fall. I didn't know how to cut trees. I was always wondering which way it would fall. So I would be chanting very intensely when I would be cutting down the trees. And then I'd tie it to Brisham, and he would go to sleep. Just these forests back here. Now everything has been changed around to a large degree. They cut down many of the forests and pushed them back. Just back there. So what I would do is I would chop the pieces of wood into very small pieces so they wouldn't be so heavy for Brisham. And I just couldn't carry them in because they were logs and we needed so much for cooking. So I just started to preach to Brisham. Because I already knew that hitting him didn't work. The more you hit him, the sounder he would sleep. Everybody else failed, so I just started I just would sit in front of him and have kirtan for him. And then preach to him. And sometimes I was just so desperate because I needed his help that he actually felt sorry for me. I could see he would look at me like I was really in a sorrowful state. And he would get up and pull the wood. So we became very good friends. So this went on for some months. One day I was upstairs looking down through the window and I saw a wagon with horses. And the wagon had a mountain of sleeping bags and other types of belongings on it. And behind the wagon was 20 brahmatrinis. or unmarried women. The leaders of the community decided that this would be the Brahmacharini ashram. And immediately when they came up, I thought that I should go down to Vrindavan. That's where all the brahmacharis were staying. So I sent a message down, and I said, please relieve me of my service up here so I can come down and live in the brahmachari ashram. And the message came back that you're the only one up there who knows how to milk cows, so you have to stay. Hare Krishna. So there were 2 grihastha couples, 20 unmarried women, and I was the only brahmachari. And when there was arti, I would stand right in front of the deities to the side, so I didn't look back for a second. And as soon as the morning program was over, I would go right down to my bhajan kutir, and I would get up around 1 in the morning to chant 64 rounds, so I have the spiritual strength to come to the morning program. Once a week I got to bring Brisham down to Bahulavan to pick up the grains for the cows, because the cows that are giving milk need certain types of grains. I put it on Brishan's back and they walk him up. And every time I'd go down, the brahmacharis would chastise me. What are you doing up there with all those women? I'd say, I don't want to be there. I begged, but I'm told I have to be up there to milk the cow. And they would say, it's all based on your desire. Those were the days of surrender. You really gave up all independence when you came to the Hare Krishna movement. So that went on for some months. I would regularly send messages down if I could come down, and they said, you could come down when you train somebody else to milk the cows. So these young unmarried ladies would come into the barn and say, you can train me to milk the cows. And I said, no, I only milk cows alone. That's my vow, to only milk cows alone. So to be honest with you, my only brahmachari association was Brisham. It was oxen. It's no problem for him. So we used to go out into the forest and I would just have nice satsang with Brisham. Cutting down trees. And one day I brought the oxen, I brought Brisham down to pick up grains, and I was told by the leader, what are you doing up there with all those women? I said, that's what I'm asking. He said, come, you can come down. So I came down and joined the brahmachari ashram there. And there, my first service was working horses. And because I wasn't very good at that, they were huge horses, gigantic horses, about 5 times my size, 10 times my size. Big European working horses. I tried, but sometimes they would bite me when I would tell them to do something. So they realized I wasn't very good for horses. So they had me digging ditches. For some months I was just digging ditches in the mud. And then, because I knew how to milk cows, they gave me the full-time service of taking care of cows. There was about 25 cows milking down there at that time. So 4 of us would milk all the cows every morning and every evening. And I would brush them and give them the grains, feed them hay, and take care of them in the winter by giving them little beds to sleep on, made out of straw. Very nice service. That was a wonderful year. Then in January of 1974, it was decided the brahmacharis would live here. So the brahmatrinis all moved to Madhuban, which was that house across the valley. And the brahmacharis moved up here. And it was very austere. We moved up here in the middle of the winter. Param Brahma Prabhu, my dear, dear godbrother, who just left his body just a few months ago, he was the temple president. And I was in charge of the cows. Gargarishi was in charge of cooking. And one devotee, I think Soma, was in charge of the deity worship. So it was just a matter of days or weeks, because it was very, very austere here, that the pujari and the cook got married. Hare Krishna. Somehow they left. So I was asked to be the pujari. The deities here were Radha Vrindavan Nath. They were installed in June of 1973. At that time, the altar was here. And the way the schedule was, later in 74, one devotee named Gosta Bihari and Jita Brata, they built this altar here. They actually carved this marble altar. And we moved the deities there. It was a grand festival. Everyone from the community came to see the deities moved. So the life was that the brahmacharis were the workforce for New Vrindavan. Every morning, Mangal Arati would be at 4 o'clock, and you had to have all your rounds done before Mangal Arati, because there was no such thing as a japa period. In fact, the devotees of New Vrindavan used to make fun of other ISKCON temples that had japa periods after Mangal Arati. We used to consider that a life of sense gratification. Plus they had Mangal Arati at 4:30. So we get up. I had to get all my rounds done before waking the deities at 3:30. Because there was no time in the day to chant even one round. It was impossible, it was so busy. So I think I used to get up at 1 o'clock every morning. And because I was the first one up in the winter, I was the first one to face the bathhouse. Hare Krishna. The bathhouse was downstairs, I'll show you. It's been renovated since then, and it was a dreary dungeon-looking like place. And the first thing you did when you woke up was offer your obeisances, and then go just outside the bathhouse was the shovel. Little shovel from the Vietnam War. Made by the U.S. Army. It was actually for digging ditches so that you could duck down from soldiers shooting at you. And there was a little can. It was an empty can from U.S. government ration peanut butter. And we would climb down the mountain, snow and ice, and then somehow dig a hole respond to nature's calls. And I remember in January, everyone, it's just one at a time, people would go down there, and there would be massive, freezing cold winds, and blizzard snow would be falling on you, and you'd just be down there. You'd really realize that you were an insignificant jivatma. And you couldn't wear any clothes except kopans, because you didn't want to contaminate any other of your clothes. That was the standard. We do it in our kopans with nothing else in the winter. Later on, we found the only place we would have any place to get clothes was there was a bin, just like a big old box in the barn of the clothes that were left by the previous families that lived in this house before the devotees came. It was all covered in mildew, and in the winter it would be covered with ice.